Good morning, third grade. I'm coming at you a little late because I've had meeting after meeting after meeting this morning. They started right at 8 o'clock and whew, just got off my last one. So I keep telling them to hurry up so I can get to my Harry Potter story and back to my third grade class. Remember that Harry has gone through the passageway, the hump of the one-eyed witch. He's got the Marauder's map in his hand. He's climbing through all the secret passageways, and he's made it into the basement of Honeydukes in the village of Hogsmeade, which is just outside of the Hogwarts castle. And Hogsmeade is one of the only pure wizarding villages left. Like, Muggles don't live there. It's kind of a hidden village. Most wizards live among Muggles all over the place, and they just make things work and they hide their stuff. But in Hogsmeade, it's like a bunch of wizarding shops, kind of a lot like Diagon Alley, just a different place. Okay. Remember, he just pushed open the trap door. He was in a cellar, which was full of wooden crates and boxes. Harry climbed out of the trap door and replaced it. It blended in so perfectly with the dusty floor that it was impossible to even tell that it was there. Harry crept slowly towards the wooden staircase that led upstairs. Now he could definitely hear the voices, not to mention the tinker of a bell and the opening and shutting of a door. You know, the tinkering of a bell, like when you walk into a shop and it ting ting, like lets people know that you're there. Not the electronic version, but when there's an actual bell hanging up there. Wondering what he ought to do, he suddenly heard a door open much closer at hand. Somebody was about to come down the cellar stairs. And get another box of jelly slugs, dear. They've nearly cleared us out, said a woman's voice. A pair of feet was coming down the staircase. Harry leapt behind an enormous crate and waited for the footsteps to pass. He heard the man shifting boxes against the wall opposite of him. He might not get another chance. Quickly and silently, Harry dodged out from his hiding place and climbed the stairs. Looking back, he saw the enormous backside of a shiny, bald head looking down in a box. Harry reached the door at the top of the stairs, slipped through it, and found himself behind the counter at Honeydukes, the candy shop, the magical candy shop. He ducked, crept sideways, and then straightened up. Honeydukes was so crowded with Hogwarts students that no one looked twice at Harry. He edged amongst them, looking around, and suppressed a laugh as he imagined the look that would spread over Dudley, remember his fat cousin, Dudley's piggy face, if he could see where Harry was now. There were shelves upon shelves of the most succulent-looking sweets imaginable. Creamy chunks of nougat, shimmering pink squares of coconut ice, fat honey-colored toffees, hundreds of different colors and kinds of chocolates in neat rows. There was a large barrel of every flavor beans, and another of fizzing Whizbees, the levitating sherbet balls that Ron had mentioned. Along yet another wall were special effects sweets, Drooble's Best Blowing Gum, which filled a room with bluebell-colored bubbles that refused to pop for days, the strange, splintery tooth-flossing string mints, tiny black pepper imps, breathe fire for your friends when you use these, ice mints, hear your teeth chatter and squeak, peppermint creams shaped like toads, they hop realistically in the stomach, fragile sugar-spun quills, and exploding bonbons. Sugar quills are like the quills that they write with, only they're made out of sugar, and they actually write, so you can suck on them during class. It's like a sucker pen. Harry squeezed himself through a crowd of 6-years and saw a sign hanging in the furthest corner of the shop. Unusual tastes. Ron and Hermione were standing underneath it, examining a tray of blood-flavored lollipops. Ew. Harry sneaked up behind them. No, Harry won't want one of those. They're for vampires, I expect, Hermione was saying. How about these, said Ron, shoving a jar of cockroach cluster under Hermione's nose. Definitely not, said Harry. Ron was so surprised he nearly dropped the jar. Harry, squealed Hermione, what are you doing here? How did you... Wow, said Ron, looking very impressed. You've learned to apparate. Apparate is when wizards, teleport in and out of places. Of course I haven't, said Harry. He dropped his voice so that none of the 6-years could hear him, and he told them all about the Marauder's map that Fred and George had given him. How come Fred and George never gave it to me, said Ron, outraged. I'm their brother. But Harry isn't going to keep it, said Hermione, as though the idea was ludicrous. He's going to hand it in to Professor McGonagall. Aren't you, Harry? What do you think? No, I'm not, said Harry. Are you mad? Said Ron, goggling at Hermione. Hand in something that good? If I hand it in, I'll have to say where I got it. Filch would know Fred and George stole it. But what about Sirius Black? Hermione hissed. He could be using one of the passageways in that map to get into the castle. The teachers have got to know. Hermione's got a good point. Like, Sirius Black is a murderer, y'all. Like, we gotta be careful. Whatever. He can't be getting in through a passage, said Harry quickly. There are 7 secret passage tunnels on the map, right? Fred and George reckon that Filch already knows about 4 of them. And the other 3, one of them's caved in, so you can't get through it. One of them's got the Whomping Willow planted over the entrance, so you can't get out of it. And the one I just came through, well, it's really hard to see the entrance to it down in the cellar. So unless he already knew it was there, Harry hesitated. What if Black did know that the passage was there? Ron, however, cleared his throat significantly and pointed to the notice posted on the inside of the sweet shop door. By order of the Ministry of Magic, customers are reminded that until further notice, Dementors will be patrolling the streets of Hogsmeade every night after sundown. This measure has been put in place for the safety of Hogsmeade residents and will be lifted upon the recapture of Sirius Black. It is therefore advisable that you complete your shopping well before nightfall. Merry Christmas. See, said Ron quietly, I'd like to see Sirius Black try and break into Honeydukes with Dementors swarming all around the village. Anyway, Hermione, the Honeydukes owners wouldn't hear a break-in, wouldn't they? They would hear a break-in, wouldn't they? They live right over top of the shop. Yes, but Hermione seemed to be struggling to find another problem. Look, Harry still shouldn't be coming into Hogsmeade. He hasn't got a signed form. If anyone finds out, he'll be in so much trouble. And it's not nightfall yet. What if Sirius Black shows up today? Huh? He'd have a job of spotting Harry in a crowded room like this, said Ron, nodding through the million windows at the... He'd have a job spotting Harry in this, said Ron. He didn't say crowd. Nodding through the windows at the thick, swirling snow. Come on, Hermione, it's Christmas. Harry deserves a break. Hermione bit her lip, looking extremely worried. Are you going to report me? Harry asked her. Oh, of course not. But honestly, Harry, have you seen the Fizzing Whizbees, Harry? Said Ron, grabbing him and leading him over to their barrel. And the jelly slugs and the acid pops? Fred gave me one of those when I was 7. It burned a hole right through my tongue. I remember my mom walloping him with her broomstick. Ron stared broodingly in the acid pop box. Reckon Fred'll take a bit of cockroach clusters if I told him they were peanuts? He was trying to get Fred back with cockroach clusters. Yuck! When Ron and Hermione had paid for all their sweets, the 3 of them left Honeydukes for the blizzard outside. Hogsmeade looked like a Christmas card. The little thatched cottages and shops now all covered in a layer of crisp snow. There were holly wreaths on the doors and strings of enchanted candles hanging in the trees. Harry shivered. Unlike the other 2, he didn't have a cloak. They headed up to the street, heads bowed against the wind, Ron and Hermione shouting through their scarves. That's the post office. Zonko's joke shop is up there. We could go up to the Shrieking Shack. Tell you what, said Ron, his teeth chattering. Shall we go for a butterbeer and the 3 broomsticks? Harry was more than willing. The wind was fierce and his hands were freezing, so they crossed the road, and in a few minutes they were entering the tiny inn. It's like an inn is kind of like a little motel type thing, a bed and breakfast. It was but they have a bar on the main level for people to come into, and like all the students go there and they get butterbeer, which is like buttered flavored cream soda that is warm. If we go back to school, we can make some. It was extremely crowded, noisy, warm, and smoky. A curvy sort of woman with a pretty face was serving a bunch of rowdy warlocks up at the bar. That's Madame Rosmerta, said Ron. I'll get the drink, shall I? He added, going slightly red. Harry and Ron made their way... I think he has a crush on her. Harry and Ron made their way to the back of the room, where there was a small vacant table between... Vacant means empty. A small empty table between the window and a handsome Christmas tree, which stood next to the fireplace. Ron came back 5 minutes later, carrying 3 foaming tankards of hot butterbeer. "Happy Christmas," he said, happily raising his tankard. Harry drank deeply. It was the most delicious thing he'd ever tasted, and seemed to heat every bit of him from the inside. A sudden breeze ruffled his hair. The door of the 3 broomsticks had opened again. Harry looked over the rim of his tankard, his glass, and choked. Professor McGonagall and Flitwick had just entered the pub in a flurry of snowflakes, shortly followed by Hagrid, who was deep in conversation with a portly man in a lime-green bowler hat and a pinstriped cloak. It was Cornelius Fudge, the Minister for Magic, which means, like, the President of Magic. In an instant, who was the one who found Harry, who's like, "You can't be sneaking off." So, like, literally the president who found Harry after he'd blown up his aunt was like, "You can't be doing this. You can't go out." And now Harry's doing exactly that. Like, no wonder he choked on his butterbeer. He is scared. In an instant, Ron and Hermione had both placed hands on top of Harry's head and forced him off his stool and underneath the table. Dripping with butterbeer and crouching out of sight, Harry clutched his empty glass and watched the teachers and Fudge feet move towards the bar, pause, and then turn and walk right towards him. Somewhere above him, Hermione whispered, "Mobilarbus!" The Christmas tree beside their table rose a few inches off the ground, drifted sideways, and landed with a soft flump right in front of their table, hiding them from view. Good thing Hermione's so good at spells. Staring through the dense lower branches, Harry saw 4 sets of leg chairs move back from the table right beside theirs, and then heard the grunts and the sighs of the teachers and the minister as they sat down. Next, he saw another pair of feet wearing sparkly turquoise high heels, and heard a woman's voice. "A small gillywater." "Mine," said Professor McGonagall's voice. "4 pints of mulled mead." "'Tis mine, Rosmerta," said Hagrid. "A cherry syrup and soda with ice and an umbrella." "Mm-hmm," said Professor Flitwick, smacking his lips. "So you'll be the recundant rum, Minister." "Thank you, Rosmerta, my dear," said Fudge's voice. "Lovely to see you again, I must say. Have one for yourself on us, won't you? Come and join us." "Well, thank you very much, Minister." Harry watched the glittering heels march away and back again. His heart was pounding uncomfortably in his throat. Why hadn't it occurred to him that this was the last week of the end for teachers, of the last week of term for the teachers, too? And how long were they going to sit there? He needed time to sneak back into Honeydukes if he wanted to return to school by tonight. Hermione's leg gave a nervous twitch next to him. "So, what brings you to this neck of the woods, Minister?" came Madame Rosmerta's voice. And we are already at 13 minutes, so I'm going to stop there. This conversation that they have gets real crazy, and then I'll read it tomorrow, and then I'm going to include a video link to this scene, and we will compare and contrast the two, because they are highly different in the way that Harry gets there and stuff, but not in what is said. So there are some differences, there are some similarities. We can talk about why there are differences and similarities. We'll get into that tomorrow. I hope you guys have a great day. Send me any work that you want to. I should be around my computer pretty much for the most of the day. Yeah, things are all right. I hope you guys are staying busy and sane and safe. And I will talk to you tomorrow morning. Bye.